We are in the middle of a maturity crisis. I talk about it a lot. I mostly use examples of women being immature.
Nether I literally hate men!
But that's just because they remind me so much of my own experiences. One of the reasons they're more and more like this is that men are immature too, even in Korea. This girl said Korean men are so bad she'd rather go extinct than date them. And this is despite having stickers on her face like a child at a carnival. Why are we so immature? I believe that it's best explained by these memes about hard times creating strong men and then strong men creating good times. Here's this guy building civilization, and then the good times create weak men. Wah, wah, I want everything for free. Wah. And then the weak men creating hard times, and this is terrible. They didn't even use a drop shadow, but it says, "You are here." And I believe that's about accurate. I believe that that is about where we are in the process. Here's a better one. It even says people instead of men. That's because it's LinkedIn. That's actually the weak men creating hard times, now that I think of it. It's a strong Zayzams. So civilization goes through these phases of decline and growth, and sometimes it's kind of irregular, but it generally sticks to the pattern. And here's a little map of it in the United States. These are the hard times creating strong men who then create good times, which create weak men who then create hard times, and then the strong men have to come back and do stuff again. And that repeats itself until Christ's return, I guess. This one kind of goes off the rails. And these are the easiest times we've ever had. This thing has 2 cup holders. So we're the weakest we've ever been. This guy volunteered to be in a fat nerd stock photo. Do you understand? This is not a performance. He needed to do this for money. We live in the worst of times. So times get good when people do stuff and make stuff and are productive, and times get bad when people want to have more stuff for doing less. That's equality. They want equality of gimme stuff and not equality of let me contribute. And this is all explainable in terms of masculinity and femininity, which is why it relates to dating. The masculine, positive, creative principle in all of us creates the value that we enjoy, and the negative female consumption principle decides what to do with it and who gets it and who spends money. It's basically who makes the money and who spends the money. And right now, our battery is dying because we have, I don't know which one is which, more negative than positive. There's more need than there is stuff for the needs. I made a Twitter post about this. The masculine creates, the feminine consumes, and that's why the feminine cannot be in charge of the masculine because it sucks up all the value and then gets angry at the value creators for not making even more, which may or may not be why certain types of relationships have more anger. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. And a lot of women got pissy in the comments. Apparently, I have womb envy. I'd love to be pregnant. And men who may as well be women. They argued that women create stuff too, mostly babies. There's childbirth, there's women create babies, which is not a great argument because if it's not my baby, if I didn't create it, then you're basically saying, here's 18 years of needs that are going to be on your tax bill. You're welcome. But of course, it's true that both men and women both create and consume things. That's why I put a girl on the chart for you, and she even has a briefcase. There you go, sweetie. But of course, men earn more than women, and of course, women spend more than men. This is just on clothes, but extrapolate as you will. So this principle is easy to see in real life. You can't have consumption in charge of production or you run out of power. So as women lead the way into more and more feminine politics, we're looking at a blue wave, they're going to push for more collective redistribution of value, more taxes, more handouts, more equality, more give me, and not more let me help, which will remove men's incentive to try at all because their own choices don't matter because they can't support themselves anyway. That's what this chart illustrates. When you make stuff, that's the red arrows, some of the stuff you get to keep, and then you can use it to support yourself and the people you care about, or you can waste some of it, which some people do on mistakes and OnlyFans and drugs and crap. And sometimes when you make stuff, you have to give it to someone else, usually the government, who then wastes it on things that you hate. And this would be the feminine principle of We need, rather than the creator of the value getting to keep it and decide what to do with it. We're going to decide what to do with it. And we're getting very little back. We're giving a lot and getting less and less and supporting things that we don't even like and we don't even want around in the first place, like your baby. And that's why men are giving up, and that's why they're not growing up, and that's why they make women do this. It's because we have been robbed so badly to pay for things we hate that we don't have anything to invest in women. We're very low on good guy points. So it's a downward spiral of entitlement. The masculine tries to make its own way, and the feminine says, but we need. And then the masculine has less ability to make its own choices, and the feminine says, well, these men out here can't support us. We need. And more men drop out and become this guy. And unfortunately, men are going to have to grow up first and learn to create and provide things because women don't have to. They get to be the table if they want. But the problem is, we can't continue to do this within the system because it will just continue to suck us dry, which makes us feel like this. So in this video, I'm going to make the case that the system we live in has changed in a bad way. That's the context outside of ourselves, not really something we can do anything about, and it's been feeling like this for a while. I'm going to demonstrate what that system is doing to people, and then I'm going to give you my experience of that system as an example of why you should avoid Peter Pan syndrome, which is when you grow up into just a tall child. So if you think I'm worth listening to, if you get something out of my content, it's only because I fought through all these ups and downs, which is how I learned all of the stuff that I am trying to teach others. That's why this video is sponsored by my own product, SelfMax, an AI-driven self-improvement system. SelfMax combines the power of artificial intelligence with my own psychologically informed insights on self-improvement to guide you towards creating the life that you want to live. SelfMax uses technology that actually learns about you and gives you customized suggestions. You can tell SelfMax about your goals and it'll keep you on track. You can use the feedback tool to tell it how things are going, and the system will help you readjust your strategy. This is great advice. I should be journaling about my travels. SelfMax even has tools to measure the level of psychological development that you're applying in your everyday life, and you can compare that to your overall score from Level Check, which is included. In short, SelfMax is an AI-powered system designed to help you discover who you are and what you want in every important part of your life, and then go make it happen. If you want to be a part of the solution and not this guy, you can subscribe to SelfMax right now using the link in the video description. You can sign up for $10 a month or get $20 off with an annual subscription. And if you already paid for Level Check, you get an additional $20 off an annual subscription. Use the promo code we posted in the Level Check Discord. So it's my hope that SelfMax can help make you become a part of the solution. It might also help to follow Nancy Pelosi's stock picks. But in order to be a part of the solution, we need to understand the problem and why times get good and bad and what it has to do with us trying. So first of all, what is the maturity crisis? Well, it's when people don't grow up. But what does that mean? Let's ask Google about immature men so we can get the approved perspective right next to the most immature possible Google Doodle. There are articles about it. I guess this guy's being a baby. Here's the same guy being comfy. Here's a guy yelling at a girl. Here's a guy yelling at his phone. That's even worse. Here's a guy playing with a toy. I guess maturity means more wheels. He's mad that he doesn't have more wheels. Nope, that's not gonna do it. How about... No, I guess it's not about the number of wheels. It took a while, but Google actually gave a good suggestion. Immaturity is refusing to accept responsibility for one's own actions. And that's what people are doing more and more of these days, including me. I used to be more like this. I still kind of am, but it's less my fault because the world is weird. It's full of people like this. By the way, please notice that this guy is getting closer to the correct set of wheels, and it's working a little bit better for him. Remember that. So then maturity, according to my little diagram, would be when you grow up and you get your little briefcase and you go off to work and you contribute value, which is, I try to use the red arrow consistently. You contribute value, you get paid for it, and you use your own choices to determine what you're going to do with it, whether it's going to go to tattoos and vacations to Dubai, or whether you're going to reinvest it in yourself and those you love and build a family or whatever you want to do. It's your choices. But of course, you are always going to have to kick some to the government. That's just the way things are. The problem begins when people collectively begin taking so much of our effort and giving it to things that we don't want. If we get to keep what we make, we get to decide what happens with it. We don't get to decide what happens with this. And we are getting a worse and worse deal, which I read recently that we spent $450 billion on illegal immigrants last year. That makes me want to stop contributing and lay around on welfare like everyone else. And then I would be very immature. And then I would have nothing to offer women except for this stuff. And I would just be trying to get in this box again. And that makes women feel like this. Listen to what she says.
You guys need to freaking get it together. I want a family. I want kids. And you guys suck! Do I have to marry someone twice my age because y'all little boys act like little children?
And that hurts because I am twice her age, which some people find creepy, and I am also a little boy in some ways. It becomes obvious when you get to know me. And some of that is my own fault, but some of it isn't. And in my opinion, it mostly isn't. Let me explain using my favorite map. This is my version of the Aqua map. Credit to Ken Wilber, who created the system. I just made it more readable, and trust me, this is more readable. I'm going to focus on the quadrants right now. I'll make them bigger. There we go. This is not as complicated as it looks. It's basically just 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways of looking at things that you have to include in every answer, or you're doing it wrong. We all get in a lot of internet arguments, probably me more than you. Sometimes people will say things like skill issue, which means either you don't get how to do it or you're doing it wrong with your actions in the real world. Sometimes people will say things like, that's a systemic problem, meaning that it is outside of the individual and it's more of a contextual problem that an individual cannot solve with their own mind or their own actions. Those answers that address only one of these boxes are almost always wrong because they don't include the other boxes. Maybe this will be more clear. This is your mind, and this is what you think and what you know and how you feel and how smart you are. And then this is all the minds around you, which you can't really directly change. God knows I've tried. And then this would be your behavior, the actual physical things you do in the world. And then this would be the behavior of everyone and everything around you, which again, you can't necessarily control. So this is what you have control over inside of your mind and outside in what you do. And then this would be how everyone thinks around you and the belief structures that you exist in. And this would be the physical system that you exist in, which you can't really control. My life is full of realizations. Like when I was 12, it hit me like a ton of bricks that grown-ups around me didn't actually know what was going on, and that bummed me out for a while. That would be an example of my culture telling me things that don't make sense and don't function in the world, and then me using my mind to learn how to interact with that. But my life is also full of things that completely destroyed my life that were absolutely no fault of my own. And when I tell people about that, which 100% belongs here, people will say, skill issue, bruh. So they're blaming me for things that happened to me, which in many cases is just another form of transferring energy from some people to other people where I wouldn't want to put it in the first place rather than letting me have control of my own life, which again makes me want to check out and be a little boy. Here's a great example. Marie here can tell that I have a problem with owning my situation, which is weird to say considering what it takes to do this in 1 year. And what she means is that my problem exists only here in my mind, and that's never true. You have to acknowledge all four of these in every case. Sometimes problems originate in your culture or your society and affect you in an inward way, and you have to use your mind and behavior to deal with them. And sometimes they're very hard to deal with. So, ideas like this, that I have a problem with owning my situation, are something that men are very used to hearing. Any problem that you have that originates out here is your responsibility. And this is consistent with the ick indicator. If you can't do it, if you're not doing enough, then you're just icky. On the other hand, women are often encouraged to believe that they are systemically and structurally oppressed, which would mean that their problems all originate out here and never with themselves, where they would have responsibility, and that comparing this to women saying mean things about men is stupid, which is a denial that men have any problems out here at all. This exposes a deep feature of human psychology, which is clearly exposed by these social experiments where, when a man pretends to attack a woman, others rush in to help. But when the same woman pretends to attack a man, others walk by and do nothing, or even film it for fun. And this guy even joins in, meaning that humans tend to perceive a problem outside of a woman as a man's fault and a problem outside of a man as a man's fault. As always, they say it themselves. Every single bad gendered thing men face is caused by misogyny and patriarchy. Men. Misandry isn't real because there is no systemic system of systemic system. This is Bugman word salad. This is what's in power right now. Here's his bio. Check this out. Victim mentality, pronouns, victim mentality, oppressed group, Superman movie. Those are all collective, needs based, feminine orientations that put him in the group that benefits from equality, which is really just redistribution. In other words, everything bad is you and everything good is me, so gimme. And of course, it doesn't stop at men and women. Anyone who's seen as an oppressor has responsibility, and anyone who's seen as oppressed does not. And this does not stop in politics or the workplace, leading to an energy transfer in one direction. So as this transfer starts to happen, some people are seen as responsible for more and more, and others for less and less. So these people think that they have a high-minded philosophy, but really they are just acting out selfish, unconscious instincts. I'll do another video going over how this level tries to be nice to everyone and it enables this one, and it's getting really bad. And it needs to be called out. That's why people love it when I make fun of these TikTok girls. Because they're always saying, why don't men get it? And why can't men do better? And they're never saying, what's causing this to happen to men and why does no one care? In other words, why are men the problem, and never why do men have problems? Well, maybe not never. There are some women who are helping, thank you, Sarah. And it creates this horrible cycle of men losing their power to support themselves and others, and then women saying, well, what the hell is wrong with men? Why can't they do this anymore? Now we need the government to take even more away so that we can be supported collectively. And at some point, the men just start to go, you know what, this is better. I'll just be a fat nerd. So I hope you get it by now. Men are not being babies for nothing. They're getting a worse and worse deal. They're putting in more and more, and it's going to places that they don't even want it to go, which bums them out, and they have less and less to make their own lives with. And this is an economic based chart, but this is not just money. This is like social inclusion and attitudes about you. Men are being expected to put in more and get less and be happy with it. And that's not a deal that you would like. You would feel like that too. So, how is this situation affecting us? Well, as people get a worse and worse deal that's more here and less here, and they lose their ability to support themselves and create the lives they want, they tend to lose their purpose and their drive to do things independently, and they tend to just lay around and consume resources. And that has real psychological effects. This is the levels section of my Aqua chart by Ken Wilber. Now, I don't have any data on this, but it really seems to me like I'm seeing fewer and fewer young people up at these higher levels of development. These are very rare anyway. But when I was in my 20s, I remember meeting a lot of people who were here and here. And when I talk to people in their 20s today, it feels like they're mostly here and some here with only a few at level 5. And that would be pretty bad if that was true, because the United States of America used to be centered at level 5, the what I call the achieve level. It's the rational, scientific, objective level. It's the one that goes beyond religious thinking and we're right because we're right. And it's like, well, what is really true? Let's observe it. So if we are sinking below that, that's going to have really bad effects. One of the researchers on my chart is Lawrence Kohlberg. He has his own level system. This would be level 1 and level 7 on my chart. Now, I hate to say this, I really, really do, but Kohlberg's research showed that the average adolescent female had attained a moral judgment rating of stage 3, which is good boy, nice girl morality, while the average adolescent male had attained a score at level 4, which is law and order mentality, and were more likely to move on to post conventional levels. The main criticism of Kohlberg comes from Carol Gilligan, who claimed that there were different developmental scales for males and females, and of course, both are equally valid. Equal. The problem is, she doesn't prove there are two different scales. She just says there are, and if you don't believe her, you're mean. On the other hand, you can prove Kohlberg's system in your own personal life, especially if you know younger people. You can watch them develop through these levels, both boys and girls, and you can watch where they stop growing. And of course, I do know women at these higher levels, just not as many. Sorry, it's science. So it's not two different scales, it's one scale that you can go through in a boyish way or a girlish way. Fun fact, boys tend to have an easier time with the odd numbered levels and girls with the even numbered levels. I've known a lot of women who do not want to leave this stage. So let's put that all together. If the science is correct that women tend to stop developing in the good boy, good girl stage, and men tend to stop developing in the law and order stage, but also are more likely than women to move on to the higher stages. And if women prefer a particular political party that has been getting all the victories for 100 years, and if that party is taking men's power away by collectivizing everything and putting it in places where men would not choose to, and if women were increasingly occupying seats of political power, well then, you would expect to see our society degrade from a law and order morality to a good boy, good girl morality, wouldn't you? We need to be more nice! If you do not now recognize the fall from here to here as the cause of every major problem in the last 30 years, I don't know what planet you're on. Law and order doesn't fix the homeless camps because it wouldn't be nice. Law and order cannot close the borders because it wouldn't be nice to keep people out. Apparently, it's not even nice to have rules about who is qualified to do important things. Now, I'm not attacking people with Down syndrome. I'm just stating the fact that very low IQ, and this is average, is one of the defining characteristics of Down syndrome. The chances that this woman has an average level of intelligence are one out of many thousands. Do you really want her to be your lawyer? Is it worth being nice? And here's the first article from Google about her, written in nice girl language. Graduating was not an easy feat because of typical societal prejudices and academic challenges towards those with Down syndrome. In other words, everything around her, but not her. Some states are even getting rid of bail because it isn't nice to poor people. God forbid we be unfair to criminals. Instead, they're replacing it with a risk assessment system. And who do you think is assessing the risk? I bet it's her. And I bet she's a DEI hire too, because that's the nice way to select employees, like flowers and butterflies. So men are more inclined than women to enforce the rules that make society function, but times got a little too good, and men got a little too soft, and they stopped standing up for what's right in favor of self-interest and avoiding punishment, which means going along to get along, like a good boy. So now, nobody's saying no to infinity equality, which means focusing on collective needs instead of individual contributions, and even the men who do want to grow up and are trying as hard as they can no longer have the resources and the social capital to do so, leading to an army of useless boy men. So, how bad is this going to get? Well, that's really up to you. I agree that incentives are pretty low right now to participate in the system, but you and I don't have any control over that. We only have control over what we think and what we do. And the more that you check out, the more of this we're going to get and the less of this. So if we don't want hard times, we need to be strong men. And I'm showing you how to do it right now. I'm saying things that might make people upset, but they're true. And the rules that society stands on have to be based on truth and not on being nice. Because nice girl rules always give everything away to whoever cries the loudest. And then all the men get tired of that, and then they check out and stop being productive and join the welfare gang, and times get bad. So, how's this gonna end? There's really only one way it can end, and that's strong men making good times, which means that you are going to have to fight for your own choices to benefit yourself instead of the welfare gang. And I think you should do that now while we're still in the early part of this, because if you don't, then you're going to be forced to when we get here. And remember, we're coming off the best times we've ever had, which means we might be headed for the worst. A lot of my followers say, why bother when it's not worth it, when we have to give so much to get so little? And what I'm telling you is there are ways to make it worth it. There are things you can do for yourself that they cannot take away from you through the system. So your choices for who you want to become are not limited to this guy or this guy. You can also be this guy, the Norman Rockwell telling the truth man. I'll just put them right here next to my balsamic vinegar stains. I'm shooting in Airbnbs, okay? There's limited table space. The point is that being this guy isn't going to solve the problem. It's going to make it worse through being complicit out of fear. And being this guy might be comfy for a while, but it's going to make the problem worse by not even trying to do what you have to do to make your own life. And being this guy might be uncomfy, but it's the only way to make things better, because this is how you grow up by taking more responsibility for how you relate to your world, and more responsible means more mature, which is the only way to make your own choices become your reality, even in Hell World. I'm tired too, and I'll tell you why. I promise I'll make this as fun as possible. I tried to draw my life out. I had to do it on the computer. I made this to illustrate the difference in my life before and after I started what I refer to as self maximizing. You should sign up for Self Max. So at these flat points, I was just getting kind of dragged along by life, waiting for life to happen to me rather than making it happen. And that's okay if you're a child, but there's no reason you can't start growing up in your teens. So when I hit this low point, I could have stayed there forever if I didn't keep trying. I was having a tough time in the job market because my advisor told me that my degree was not worthless, which it was until about here, but only because I had a friend who got me a job, and I met the friend in grad school, which is where I learned all this. I was also coming out of a really bad breakup. I had a nasty girlfriend, and I let her treat me poorly because I had self-image problems from a difficult early life. And I fixed all of that during this time, so the next time it happened, it wasn't nearly as bad. Most of this pain was actually from the job. I was working at a restaurant for 6 months because they said they would make me a waiter, and then they hired an 18-year-old girl instead, and she wasn't even that hot. So I've had some misfortunes from outside of me, like being misled about how the world works, and I've made some mistakes from inside of me, like letting people treat me poorly, but I have been choosing to consciously take control of the way that I think and the way that I behave towards the world around me for almost 20 years, and it has had very powerful effects. Right now, my life is getting better faster than it ever has before, and I could never have done this if it wasn't for what I learned during this time. So, because I created a lot of value in myself, others were not able to take it away. How can you make these principles work for you? A lot of young men are living at this self interested stage. That would be Peter Pan here. And when you tell them to grow up, the only thing they can see coming is the good boy stage, and that looks really bad right now because the good boy stage is all about doing what's expected of you by society. And right now, society expects a lot and doesn't give very much back. But I'm telling you that there's more beyond that. And if you grow up enough, it helps you learn to slip between the cracks and make your own life better. In other words, you learn to see value differently, and then you can create value for yourself that you get to keep, that you can hide from the need machine, just not the IRS. That's what I did, and my life since then has had its hard points, especially this one, but overall, It's been pretty amazing, especially compared to anything that came before it. So when people tell you to keep trying, I know that it can sound a lot like, just be this guy, just keep getting taken advantage of. But you don't have to do that. You can push past it and become this guy and put yourself in a strong position. Why should you bother doing that? Well, because they're not going to, because they don't have to. They can just do this. Remember, the core of the maturity crisis is people choosing to be comfy and asking for handouts instead of contributing, and society doesn't let everyone do that. Some people are passive victims of their circumstances, and other people are responsible, and you're in the wrong group. This is what I refer to as being the table, which is when a man says, "Well, what do you bring to the table?" And the woman says, "I am the table," because she has been fooled into thinking that relationships are about a woman focusing on her own needs while the man does everything, which has actually never happened in history. Here's a great example of a girl who fell for that and a guy who corrected her, which is what you need to do.
Girls think that they want to date a high value man until he starts calling you out for not taking responsibility, before he starts holding you accountable, before he has higher standards for you than you have for yourself.
So she got a rude awakening and realized she couldn't do this, but only because he has something that she wants. So you're never going to be in control of your life until you have something people want, and we're never going to be in control of society until we have something people want that they can't just steal and turn us into this guy. And you also can't give it away for free. That's why we hate simps. This guy thinks he's eventually gonna get something back for this. He's not. So even though they won't admit it, they need us to be in charge and not equal, even as they try to knock us down a peg. So even though men and women are getting less mature over time, especially since the smartphone, women just don't get called out for it. If a man spoke like Kamala Harris, he wouldn't get hired at McDonald's. So this is a really bad situation. Women in general don't have any more pressure to take responsibility for their actions, yet they are more and more in charge of things. And that's really scary because women are now 60% of college students, and they're struggling to find men who make as much money as they do, despite voting to get this from the government. And women mostly only respect men who can take control. And when men try to take charge, they find that more and more of their power gets sucked away and sent to God knows where. We kinda know where. And a lot of men, myself included, have been saying, what do you want us to do? The same behaviors that used to work and the ones that we were told to do no longer fit into the system. They just turn us into this guy. We were all misled. We were set up to fail. These bad parts of my life were mostly due to being told the wrong things about how to live in the early part of my life when I was too young to know the difference. And that probably happened to a lot of you too, and it probably didn't work out very well, and you're probably getting blamed for it anyway, and that really sucks, and there's nothing you can do about it except for finding a way to grow up anyway. This is a great way to start. Just say true things even when they're uncomfy. Stop asking for inclusion and start becoming something that people need, and then don't give it to them until you get what you want. Remember, society is robbing you blind right now because it considers everything bad to be your fault and giving your stuff to the welfare gang, whoever cries the loudest about equality, because nothing bad is their fault. And this isn't going to change. These perceptions are going to stay that way. You're on your own. No one's coming to save you. And this redistribution means a lot of gimme gimme without a lot of people making things better. So if you make the comfy choice right now, it might be fun for a while, but you will be weak when this inevitably happens. But if you put in the work now while it's easy, then you will have some kind of chance to escape like I did here and here, through tons of hard work and incredible good luck. So I asked you to remember this guy for a reason. Now, I'm not asking you to view Google as a source of wisdom. I just thought it was funny how this guy looks so upset at his tiny motorcycle, and this guy looks so happy with his slightly larger toy car. That's what I mean by this red arrow. It's a small improvement, but it's an improvement, and those things add up over time. That's why you have to do things like getting in shape and learning to like yourself a little more, because you don't know how they're going to pay off later. So how do you make it through the hard times? I pointed out earlier that immaturity is refusing to take responsibility for your own actions. Here's this guy again. I hope he got paid. Another way to put it is not being able to use your own intelligence without guidance from outside of yourself. Something no one told me in the early part of my life is that the more you take responsibility for how you react to the world around you, not for what happens to you, but for how you react to it, the more your inner guidance grows. You actually become more mature, and it also helps you become more competent and confident, which is what everybody wants from you, which gives you more power. And then you don't have to get stuck here being basically a workhorse for people who are taking advantage of you. So even if society is giving you a bad deal right now, and it is, there are still an infinite number of ways for you to put your own effort into yourself and grow your value and your negotiating power and figure life out a little bit more. And SelfMax is designed to help with that, so I hope you sign up. But even if you don't, I hope you find some way not to be this guy or this guy and come join us up here. We need as many as we can get. One more thing, I drew this but I forgot to include it, and I want you to understand that adding versus subtracting energy. That's the positive and negative from the battery, or the other way around, whatever. Okay, so this guy chops trees, this guy pays $100 a tree, they agree, and the world gets better. That's a positive, that's adding, building the world energy. And then over here, this girl says, my PowerPoints about cis white hetero privilege are worth $150,000 a year, and the boss says no, and she says, why are you attacking me? I'm suing. And I'm sure you're familiar with that. And that's what I mean when I say the welfare gang. It's like, I don't care if you value this. Gimme. And that's why feminine energy can't be in charge of masculine or the battery dies. And that's why you can't tell the world to love you as you are. That's child mentality. You have to offer something. And that's why you can never let anyone be the table, because you need to be in control of where your stuff goes and what you get for it. Okay, that's it. Good luck with wherever we're going. I hope you're ready.